Hello, students. This is the second part of the homework for the second class of level 2. In the class, we set up our production server on DigitalOcean. In this, and also as part of the homework, you created a swap space, a swap file, and you also installed some software. One part of that software being NGINX. NGINX is a web server, and we're going to use NGINX to display some content, to display a website for us. And if you have successfully set up NGINX on your server and started NGINX, the way that what it will look like if you actually type in the IP address of your server, if you type that IP address into a web browser and hit enter, you will actually get this website right here. And what I asked you to write down this IP address so you could refer to it easily in case you didn't. I would suggest writing it down now, so because you're going to use that a lot. So let's just see how we can retrieve it. So let's log into DigitalOcean. I was already logged in, so it takes me directly to my DigitalOcean. I created a new server that I named Joe. It has the following IP address, and basically you can find your service IP address by going to your droplet control panel in DigitalOcean. And we can see that mine is 104.236.225 and 34. All right. So NGINX is up and running. If it's not, you can't proceed. So you got to make sure that whatever your IP address is, when you type it into a web browser, you need to get this. If you don't, let me know. I'm going to assume that this is working, and let's get straight to it. So I'm going to connect to my server using the SSH command, space, and followed by my username, which you created in your class, and that I would recommend that you write down as well. I think you guys used your first name, just like I did. So SSH space username at, and then the IP address of your server, which was I copied it from my web browser, so let's modify that a little bit. But whatever your IP address is, this is how you log into SSH, to your server using SSH. Enter. All right, now you're logged in, and you can see that you are logged in as Eric, or whatever your username was, and this is your server name. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to create a new directory on our server where we can store our website data. And I don't really want this to be in our home directory, because what if we have more users on the server and maybe someone else needs to edit this website. And let's just create a new directory under our root directory. So let's go to the root, pwd to see where we are, and we can see that we're now under root. Let's do a quick LL. Quick check here. As you know, this period right here represents the directory we're currently in, and you can see that it's owned by root. The group associated with the website is root, and you can see the permissions. So we're not a root, so we're not going to be this permission. We're not in the group root, so we're not going to use these permissions, which means we're going to use these permissions. And if you wanted to write to this directory, to the root directory, we can see that we have no write access. This means we cannot create files or folders. Let's just try to create something. Let's do, as you see, we cannot do it. So the only way we can do this is to become root. So let's temporarily become root and create a directory called data. It's going to ask us for our sudo password, or sorry, it's going to ask us for our password, and this is the password that you set when you change when you create your user. You set a password for him or her. So here is, I'm simply typing in my password. As you can see, the cursor doesn't move, but that's fine. That's a security feature. Hit enter. Input your password and hit enter. Okay, if it says nothing, that means it worked. So let's see that we make sure we actually created a new directory here, and we can see that since we ran it as sudo, it's creating a new directory as root. Let's enter into this directory. let's create a new directory called www, where we'll store our HTML files that will display content for us on the web in a few minutes. So let's create a new directory. Oops, sorry. Sudo, and let's now once again note that that this directory is owned by root. I'd like us to be the owner of this directory, so I'm going to change the ownership of this directory, and I'm going to use that with the chown command. CHOWN. Let's see a little bit how this works. So we can see that chown takes a bunch of options, then it takes the new owner of the file or the directory, and the new group of the file or directory, and then finally the name of the file. So let's we want to change the www directory to be owned by me. So who am I is a command that tells my username, and it's pretty evident that my username is Eric, and we can also see that by who we're logged into here. But who am I tells the username. I would then like to assign both a new owner for www and as well as a new group. So let's see what groups Eric belongs to. Let's type groups Eric, and we can see that here's my username Eric, and to the right of the colon are all the groups I belong to, and currently there's only one group that I belong to. So let's use that group. Let's do a chown Eric colon Eric. And finally the directory name, hit enter. Oops, once again, we obviously need to do it with sudo root permissions. And now we can see that we've changed the www directory to be owned by me, which means I can freely write stuff into it. Let's go into here. Let's go into www. And note that I type cd and a w and then a tab, and it auto completes for me, so I don't have to type everything. Let's create just a random file, or not a random file, but let's create a file called index.html, which is the standard sort of file for your web server. Whenever you don't type anything, it's going to look for this file. Let's create an empty file called index.html. Let's just fill it with some content. So let's just fill it with hello, exit out of the file, save, and now we can see what's in there by typing cat and the name of the file, and we can see that it contains hello. I'd like hello to get displayed here. Instead of this, I wanted to say hello for the time being, and let's just reload this and see what happened. And obviously nothing changed because this alone wasn't enough for it to display hello. So we need to change some stuff about NGINX for this to happen. So let's see how this would work. Let's go to NGINX, and you have to read the manual for NGINX if you really want to. NGINX. You really have to read a manual for NGINX if you want to understand this in depth. There's plenty of documentation here. We are pretty much going to follow the beginner's guide, slightly modified. You can check that out here if you want to have more details. But let's and that will explain a lot of the things I'm talking about in this tutorial or in this homework. You can read that in more detail here, but for now let's just go to the directory where etc where NGINX is stored, and that happens to be under root. There's a directory called etc, and then there's a directory called NGINX under that. That's where NGINX is stored. So let's see where we are. Well, we are right here. Let's see what's in here. NGINX main configuration file is this one. It's called nginx.conf. That's what contains all the kind of like meta settings and whatnot. And then there's another directory which contains settings for each individual. Because you can have many websites stored on the same server, and then it's NGINX's job to figure out how to route requests to the correct location. So let's say that you have mydomaina.com and mydomainb.com, and they both point to your server, to this server. NGINX will know you will route NGINX to if requests are coming from the into the mydomaina.com address, it will go to a certain location. If it's coming into the B domain, it will go to another location. And let's take a quick look at nginx.conf. So let's do a cat nginx.conf here, so we can see its content. Here's all the content for nginx.conf, and there's a lot of it. Most of it is commented out, as you can see. We're actually going to end up deleting all of this and just writing a very, very minimalistic version of it. But you can pay attention to some of this. We're going to work with this later as we get more advanced. But there's a bunch of stuff here that is relevant, but that we don't really have to deal with at this point. But the one thing you should make sure that you know is that the structure of this file is as follows. You need at least one, and these are called blocks. So whatever has a name and two curly brackets is called a block. And this is the way we configure NGINX with different kinds of blocks. So an NGINX configuration file needs an events block. We're going to create that, but ours is going to be empty. And it needs an HTTP block, and we're going to create that as well. But ours won't be empty. It will have some stuff in it, but not nearly as much stuff as is in there. The last thing I wanted to say is that there's a command in NGINX that's called include, which simply takes a text file or a file from your computer and includes it as it's written. So that means that it will take all the files that are in the sites enabled directory and include them as if they were copied and pasted into this document. So while we have some settings in this conf file, we also have to be aware that that we have some settings in this folder as well. The sites enabled directory as well. We have a file here called default that has some content. So this, you can imagine this content to be pasted into the main configuration file as well. All right. The main thing I want to point out, and the main reason I'm going over this, is that currently NGINX, in its default way being set up, is being set up to display this default configuration page. And you don't have to know NGINX configuration syntax in detail, but there is one little thing that I would like to draw your attention to, which is the root command, which is saying that, hey, whenever you go to whatever you serve a site, look for the actual content in this directory right here. So let's actually make sure that it's doing that. So let's see what if we were to go to this directory. Let's open up a new terminal. So we have two of them. So let's do SSH. How do I do that? History. Oops. History. Let's find my SSH command. Copy. And I actually think you can type history followed by that number. But I'm forgetting how to do that exactly. Maybe type history 468, and then it does it automatically. I'm just going to do this for now. Now I'm logged in again. Let's copy this specific. Where was it? Root. Where was our root? There it is. Here it is. So let's copy this path and just see what's in here. So let's go to this path, see what's in here, and we can see that there's an index file in here. Let's open up that index file. Oh, and I'm seeing that this is probably owned by root, so we cannot edit it. And I actually intend to edit this a little bit, so let's edit it as root. So sudo nano index password. All right, let's verify that this matches what we have. So it says, if you can see this page, NGINX web serve successfully, and you can see that it matches with this, and welcome to NGINX. Let's insert an extra exclamation mark here, or a few extra. Let's hit exit, save, and let's reload and see what happens. And as you can see, we've modified the right source, which means that we kind of know what we're doing. And if we wanted to, we could simply replace this with any content we want to. But let's go back to what it was. Let's move this. Let's delete these. Save. All right, reload. Okay. What I want to do is, as you can see, that NGINX in its default configuration is pointing to a file that resides, it's pointing to an index.html file that resides here in this directory. I want NGINX to point to our data directory, our data www directory, to an index.html file in that directory. So let's see how we could configure NGINX to do that. Let's go back to our previous window and go up one level. So cd space dot dot pwd. Okay, we can see that we're in the main NGINX folder directory. Let's do an LL. All right, so back to nginx.conf. I actually want to, let's see, you remember, cat nginx.conf. That's that big file with a lot of settings. What I wanna do is I wanna change the name of nginx.conf into nginx.conf original, and I'm just making that name up to note to myself that, hey, I want to create a new, what I will do in a second is create a brand new nginx.conf file, but I still want to save the default one into a new file so that I can maybe revert back to it later, or get copy and paste some code from it. So all I'm doing here is renaming nginx.conf to nginx.conf.original, and you can rename it to whatever you want, whatever makes it apparent to you what you're doing. So let's do that. And also, since since it's owned by since we're in a root owned directory, I need to do this using the sudo command. Otherwise, it won't work. All right, so let's see that we have now renamed it. Let me create a brand new nginx.conf. So touch nginx.conf. Once again, I forgot sudo. So sudo touch nginx. So when I misspelled it, so sudo nginx, sudo touch nginx.conf. Okay, let's edit this conf file. So I've actually taken the liberty of preparing a very, very minimalistic conf file. So let's edit it and paste it in. So let's paste it. My conf file only contains two blocks. It contains an events block, which I've left completely empty, and it contains an HTTP block, which I've left, which I've written some very minimal stuff in. And these are the two default blocks that we need to configure NGINX. Inside of the HTTP block, I have a server block. You can read more about this in NGINX's documentation. But basically, the flow is as follows: you have an HTTP block, an outer HTTP block. Inside of that, you have a server block, and inside of that, you have a location block. The server block, if you have many different websites that point to the same server, you will have one server block for each website. So I might have, if I had mydomaina.com and mydomainb.com, I would have one server block for the mydomaina.com and another server block below here for the mydomainb.com domain. Anyway, we only have one server. I mean, we only, at this point, we're only concerned with our one source of input, which is going to be the kind of default way to communicate with the server, which is its IP address. So we don't have to have more than one server block. This is our default server block. That's all we need. But we do need to say that this server block needs to look for data in a specific location in our file system, and that location is going to be the data root /data/www directory. So real quick, what this means is, all we're saying here is that, and once again, you have to read more about this in the NGINX documentation. It's an hour worth time, time spent to learn it more or less. It will tell you that every location block takes some sort of parameter. In this case, the parameter is the root parameter, which means that what this does is it matches anything that comes after root. Whatever, let's say we wrote sign up .html, it would simply go and look for a signup.html file inside of this directory. So we look for a file called /data/www/signup.html. That's all this syntax does. If we write nothing, it's going to look for /data/www/index.html. That's the way it works. Let's let's exit. Oops, I was in read-only mode. Let's exit and not save, and do it again. So let's do it in sudo nano. Let's paste it. Exit. Yes. All right. Now we can confirm that we have configured this. Let's see what happens. So I'm now telling that instead of NGINX looking in the in this directory right here, USR share index HTML, instead of looking for an index.html file in this directory, it should look for an index.html file in this directory. So let's in our other terminal session that we have here, let's instead go to this directory and see what we have. So we know that we have an index.html file that we have created. It's kind of meaningless at this point. It only contains hello, a few exclamation marks. That's all. But at least it exists, and it's readable by anyone. So it's readable by us and by anyone else, and which means it should be readable by NGINX as well. So let's see what we need to do next. So let's reload this page, and as we can see, nothing has changed, which means we're doing something wrong or we're missing something. And what we need to do is we need to reload NGINX. Or more specifically, we need to reload NGINX's settings, because we've updated settings, and now we just need to tell NGINX to, hey, go and read the new settings, and then go from there. And the way we want to do this is we first want to try the settings and see if they are valid, like that we didn't make any syntax errors or any other weird mistakes. And what we're going to use with that is simply sudo nginx -t, which is simply testing our settings file and ensuring us that we're doing it correctly. And if we're not, at least we know that, so we don't restart nginx and then it fails. So let's run this and see what we get. All right, so we're getting that the configuration file syntax is okay, the configuration test is successful. That's exactly what we wanted. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to restart nginx, which we'll do with the following command: sudo service nginx. Sorry, we're not going to restart it, we're going to reload it, which means we're just going to reload the settings. So let's do that. We can see that it reloaded the configuration, which was that nginx.conf file we just edited. It says okay, which is good news. And now we can expect this to no longer look into that old directory that we had, but rather in our new data/www directory. Let's see what happens. All right, it works. This is all good. I'd like to do one more thing, which is I'd like this to become, if you look in the source, if you right click and look in view page source, you'll see that this isn't actually HTML format. This is simply some text. And let's just make this into a proper website. On my GitHub, I just created an HTML5 template, which I'd like you to clone. All this is it's one file called index.html. It has some standard HTML5 markup. This is all standard. It has a title that we can change. It says welcome to my server, and then regards, and then some kind of name. Let's clone this repository into our server. Here's the address to clone it. Let's copy that using. Let's just copy this. Let's then go to our. Let's go here. So. Let's go to temp, which is an area you can. So let's go to root first. Let me show you what's in the root. In root, you have our newly created data directory, but you also have the etc directory, which contains nginx, and your home directory, which contains all kind of like your own files. But we also have a directory called temp, and let's use temp. We'll use temp to like kind of store things that we don't mind if they get cleared out a few weeks later, if an automatic process comes and cleans it up. So we'll store anything in temp that we kind of need to throw away later. By the way, here we can see our swap file that we created in the homework. Anyway, so let's go into temp. And let's try to clone this directory. It shouldn't work because we're in a root directory. We're in a directory owned by root, but let's just try and make sure. I think because this is the temp directory, we're actually permitted to do whatever we want with it. So even though this was owned, oh, sorry, of course, there we go. We have read, write, access, read, write, and execute for everything. So that's why we were able to clone this repository into the temp directory. So, and once again, to clone a directory, all we're doing is we use git clone, and then the URL for the repository. That URL can be found whatever repository you want to clone. You can find it here. We're going to use the HTTPS version. If you cannot clone a Git and SSH version, because that means you need to have access to whoever wrote the repository. You need to have access to their private keys, which you don't. So you need to always clone. Or actually, maybe there's a way, but I think generally speaking, you want to always clone using the HTTPS protocol, which is this. And so finally, git clone and then the URL, and that's what we just did. So we now have an HTML template. Let's go in there and see what we have. So cd HTML. We have an index file. Let's see what we have there. So we have index, exactly as expected. We have some text. Welcome to my server. Regards. Let's move this index into our data www directory. Let's move it in here. Okay. Let's then go to, I think here we're already here. So let's do now. What do we have here? Now the file should be moved in here. Okay. Finally, we can go back to our temp directory, and finally just one level up, and finally just remove this one using the rmrf command. Note, this is a very dangerous command. You can do a lot of damage using this command, so be careful. But I feel pretty confident that I'm removing something that I should. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And we can then confirm that it was removed. Anyway, let's go back to our data.www directory, and let's resume from here. We had just looked inside of the index file, and we concluded that let's just update this. Oh, by the way, first of all, we should make sure that what we can expect, instead of this saying hello, now that we have kind of updated the index page, we should expect it to say welcome and regards John Doe. So let's make sure. Let's reload. You can also reload. I use Command R to do it fast, but you can also type this one. And we can see that it says welcome to my server, regards John Doe. All good. Let's now edit this using, and once again, let's do an LL to see what permissions we have. And we can see that this file is owned by us, and we have write permissions to it, so we should be able to edit this. Let's edit it using the editor nano index.html, enter. Let's simply just change the name, regards Eric. You can write whatever you want. And let's try and see. And it works. And that pretty much concludes this exercise. With this exercise, we showed you how to set up a real website on your server. If you had a domain, you could have connected your domain to this, and you would have had pretty much a domain with some content on it. And it's as simple as that. Just graphically speaking, what we did is we had we were having a user type in an IP address in their browser. That sends a request to this IP address. That request lands on our server. So this is our server. Oops, that was unnecessarily large. Let's do. So this is our server, and the request comes into our server. Somewhere in our server we have NGINX running, and as a little process, NGINX is going to be running. NGINX is sitting here waiting for requests. So whatever request comes in, it's going to hit NGINX. So NGINX is the starting point in our server. And sometimes NGINX will tell NGINX to send this request, pass it on to, like, let's say a web application, and that will create some content and send back to NGINX, and then NGINX sends out the finished result. In this case, we do everything inside of NGINX. So the NGINX gets our request. It looks up the content that it wants to send back, which in this case was this index.html file, and it simply sends that back to the web browser, and the web browser then renders the page and shows this. And that's all we're doing now. And good luck with the homework, and please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll see you on Saturday. Thank you. Bye.